I wanted to make a few comments about the whole Tradwife phenomena. This is something that I've seen blow up more recently, and this has been going on for a while. I have videos about the whole hashtag trad movement in general, but there's been a bit of discussion online, especially on Twitter, because of a particular woman who has a Tradwife account on TikTok, and there's been a lot of conversation around things that she said in this whole movement in general. Now, it is a little odd because if you look at this woman's account, she's actually not even married yet, so I don't know how you talk about being a Tradwife when you're not married, but regardless of that particular individual, there are just a few comments that I want to make. And really, I'm going to be asking the question, is a Tradwife, in terms of the movement today, actually traditional? And I'm going to answer that question with a no. And so there are a few reasons for that. So the first thing I want to discuss, and this is really a major point, is what I see in a lot of what is expected in a kind of traditional household, or what's conceived to be a traditional household, especially from younger people who I think their view of what a traditional household is has really been formed by media, by images that they've seen, and it tends to model the kind of household you had in, say, the 1950s. And that model, Leave It to Beaver type 1950s household, is a model where there is a father who goes to work. The wife stays home. He leaves the house to go to work. He's at his office, from 9 to 5. They have a nice house in the suburbs. He drives into the city, drives back to the suburbs at night. By the time he gets home, dinner is ready on the table. The wife has been taking care of the kids and cleaning all day. Now, what you have to understand historically about the 1950s is that what happens in these kinds of households is not really traditional at all. There is a major shift away from how a traditional society functions. And the argument that I'm going to make is a traditional marriage requires traditional society. It requires traditional community, not just the what we call the nuclear family, but actually it includes the extended family as well as broader mutual bonds within a particular community. And so if you look at a traditional society, older societies, and by traditional society, and this is a broad term, so I don't know how helpful it even is to just throw it around, and there are many societies that you could refer to as traditional, but this is the case with really most societies in the history of the world, wherever they are, is you do have generally the household structured in a particular way, where you have, yes, the wife and mother takes care of the kids and the house, and the father works. That all sounds okay, like the trad household. However, that was never done. The expectation prior to the modern era was never an isolated woman at home. I see this especially with the quiverful community, like the Duggars, that type of community where there is this expectation. Kind of the idealized life is you go by a cabin in the woods, and your wife wears these beautiful prairie dresses all the time and has 12 kids and raises them all, homeschools all the kids. The husband goes to work and comes home, and everybody's just very grateful to see him at the end of the day. And while, yeah, sure, that sounds nice, it's nearly an impossibility for any human being to live like that. I mean, to be this, isolated woman who is trying to take care of raising kids, cleaning, cooking, keeping everybody happy. I mean, that's really an impossibility, and nobody can be expected to do that very well. And that's not what was expected in traditional cultures and societies. So I've given an example of this at a number of different points, where you have the story of Jesus going to teach at the temple when he's 12 years old. So he's only 12 years old. He's traveling with his family. Mary doesn't know where Jesus is, but it takes her a while to realize that she doesn't know where Jesus is before she starts searching for him. And he's at the temple, and then he has this rebuke of her where he says, "Didn't you know that I was in my Father's house?" But notice that she doesn't know where he is for a long time because they were traveling with extended family. And it wasn't the expectation that you have an isolated nuclear family household where the mother is just literally doing all of the tasks by herself in a way that is nearly impossible to actually perform without broader help from the community. And so in a traditional family, you need traditional community, traditional society, and people that can actually nurture and help one another. That also largely means that you are going to have to care about your extended family. You should care about your parents. You should maybe live near your parents, which is something that traditional societies always privilege. So what happens in, say, the 1950s is then the woman is by herself at home. And it is true that women generally tend to be more social than men. Women tend to be more extroverted, while men tend to be more introverted. That's obviously not universally the case. But with that being the case, it's very difficult for women to just be stuck at home with kids. And anyone that stays home with kids for a significant amount of time recognizes that there's a difference between socializing with adults and being with your kids. Like, there are social needs that you have that cannot be fulfilled by you raising a child, because it's a very different set of skills and parts of your personality that you're using for one or the other. You know, raising your kids takes work. It's not just the kind of relaxing chat you have with your friends. And the more that people moved away from the cities into the suburbs, the more people privileged owning more land rather than being in neighborhoods where you actually know your neighbors, the distance between work and home, all of these different factors, the more isolated the woman becomes. And so rather than actually being in a community, she's stuck at home with her kids only, without any support or help. And the only friendship she has is, you have phone calls to her friends, or you have the rise of like soap operas on TV, because you can't actually be active in doing anything out in the world because you're taking care of things in an isolated sphere that is in your home. And so you share in the life and drama of these people that you don't even know, because they don't actually exist in a soap opera. And it's kind of this replacement for being involved in real community. So that's the first and major point that I want to make is, if you're really going to talk about being a trad wife, then you've got to create traditional communities and societies. If you're a man looking for a trad wife and expecting that your wife can just be complete superwoman and take care of absolutely everything all the time, and you don't have to do anything around the house, that's just a completely unrealistic expectation. And it's completely unfair to expect anyone to live in such a way. And the second point is probably a pretty obvious one, and that is that when you look at these, trad wife, say, accounts on TikTok, it's pretty clear that to some extent it's a kind of a weird fetish thing, which is true about everything on the internet, unfortunately. And that some of these people probably aren't actually that sincere. Just like anything you find on the internet, people do things for attention. Some of the accounts do things in like the most extreme, ridiculous ways just because they want to get feedback, because you get more popular, you get more views if you do things in a more extreme way, because even if people are watching you to yell about what you're doing, they're still watching you and you're still getting the clicks and views. So that's true with anything on the internet. So I'm sure with the whole trad wife thing, that's the same like it is anywhere else. And the next thing that I want to talk about, this is more related to the men very young men usually, in the kind of trad wife circles that are talking about how they want to have a trad wife. A lot of times I've seen men do this and talk about being trad while also being very insulting toward women, and thinking that it is okay for them to judge women based on their appearance in really gross, disgusting ways. And what I see is kind of a pornification of traditionalism, which sounds very strange. But you get a number of individuals who spend a lot of their time on 4chan, have been very clearly influenced and shaped by pornographic material that they've seen, and then they recognize that it's bad, and they want to become traditionalists because they're trying to move away from that type of movement, but they bring this kind of pornified language and view of women with them, and now begin associating this with traditionalism. And if we're going to have a traditionalism that is actual traditionalism, and it actually makes improvements in the world and does positive things, that begins with learning manners. There are social rules. There are ways that you communicate that are appropriate, and there are ways that you communicate that are not appropriate. And all traditional cultures have rules and etiquette around how you speak of women as a man. And what I don't like that I see on social media is men who speak horrifically about women, insult women's appearances, and somehow expect that they are to be honored and respected as the leader of their household someday. And then whine and complain because they can't find a wife because feminism has destroyed women, without actually stopping and looking at themselves and thinking, oh, maybe I'm just a jerk, and that's the reason I can't find a woman. So if you're a man and you want a trad wife, you want a traditional family, and I think a real traditional family is a very good thing. But if you want that as a man, look at yourself first. Take care of your own crap. Take care of your own character. Look at yourself, build your character, figure out who you are, not in the I'm looking for my isolated individual self in my head, like people say today, but figure out who you are in society, how it is that you can function properly in society, how it is that you can provide for a woman, how to treat women well, how to speak with absolute respect toward women, and not in this kind of abusive language, because the kind of memeing and abusive language is really the ultimate modernity or post-modernity. It's not traditionalism at all. So those are my brief thoughts for whatever they're worth, and hope you find them somewhat useful. I did a video, 5 Problems with the Trad Movement. I'm going to link that below if you want to check that out. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. God bless.